The Grand Galactic Hall looked too expensive for a man who still owned the same cracked coffee mug from the war. Captain Ethan Cross stood beneath a ceiling full of floating stars, trying not to look impressed while 3 moons rotated politely above the guests. Every species in the Alliance had sent someone important. Silver-skinned diplomats whispered behind breathing masks. Insectoid generals clicked their jeweled mandibles, and a floating ambassador, shaped like a blue jellyfish, kept bumping into a chandelier and apologizing in 12 languages. Ethan adjusted the collar of his formal black uniform. The medals already on his chest felt heavier than armor, but tonight he expected one more. The big one. The kind people placed in museums after the hero died dramatically. Since he was still alive, slightly hungry, and mostly confused, he hoped they would simply hand it over and let him find the food table. Beside him, Sergeant Milo leaned closer and whispered, "Try to smile. You look like someone just told you the buffet is holographic." "If the buffet is holographic," Ethan muttered, "I'm starting another war." Milo choked back a laugh as the hall lights dimmed. At the center of the vast chamber, a circular platform rose from the floor, formed from transparent crystal and moving lines of golden code. The Chancellor of the Galactic Alliance stepped forward, tall and ancient, with robes that shimmered like captured nebulae. "Captain Ethan Cross of Earth," the Chancellor announced, and the hall fell into a silence so deep Ethan could hear the tiny repair drones humming behind the walls. "You crossed the burning moons of Talvek. You carried wounded soldiers through plasma storms. You saved lives not only from your own world, but from 27 allied species." Applause thundered through the hall. Ethan walked toward the platform, keeping his face calm, though his boots felt suddenly too loud. He bowed awkwardly because no one had explained whether humans were supposed to bow, salute, kneel, or do something embarrassing with their elbows. "I accept this honor with gratitude," he began, hoping that sounded noble enough. The Chancellor raised one glowing hand. "The medal will come later." Ethan blinked. Later? A ripple moved through the crowd. Milo's eyebrows climbed so high they nearly joined the floating moons. The golden code beneath Ethan's boots brightened. Ancient symbols unfolded in the air, circling him like living fireflies. The Chancellor's voice deepened, no longer sounding like one person, but like an entire courtroom speaking through him. "By the oldest law of the Life Guardian Accord, the one who preserves life in war shall be given not medal, but bond. Not decoration, but duty. Not applause, but a healer." Ethan's smile froze. "A what?" The crystal floor opened without a sound, and another platform rose beside him. Upon it stood a young alien woman in white and silver medical robes, clutching a small diagnostic case against her chest, as if it were the only sensible object in the universe. She looked almost human, with delicate features, warm silver eyes, and long platinum blonde hair braided down her back. But her ears were long and elegant, tapering upward through her hair, like pale moonlit blades. She stared at Ethan. Ethan stared back. The entire Galactic Hall stared at both of them. The Chancellor spread his arms. "Captain Ethan Cross, meet Nurse Lyra Veyr of the Aurelian Medical Order." Lyra's long ears twitched once. "I was told I would be receiving a research certificate." Ethan slowly turned toward the Chancellor. "That makes 2 of us. I came for a medal." Somewhere in the crowd, Milo whispered loudly, "Honestly, this is better than a medal." Ethan shot him a look sharp enough to cut starship hull plating. The ancient symbols spun faster, projecting scenes above them. Ethan carrying injured alien children through smoke. Lyra operating beneath emergency light as bombs shook a field hospital. Both of them saving lives on opposite sides of the same terrible war. The air smelled faintly of ozone and ceremonial flowers. Ethan had faced orbital bombardments with less panic than he felt in that moment. Lyra lifted one hand politely. "Excuse me, Chancellor, but is this legal?" The Chancellor looked uncomfortable, which was impressive for a man who had probably seen empires collapse before breakfast. "The accord predates current law." Ethan nodded slowly. "That's politician language for, we have no idea." A few diplomats gasped. One laughed, then pretended to cough. Lyra glanced at Ethan, and despite the confusion, a tiny smile touched her mouth. "You speak very boldly for someone being awarded a nurse." "I'm not sure awarded is the word I'd use." "Good. I was afraid humans enjoyed this sort of thing. Only during tax season." Her smile grew before she could hide it. Then the golden code suddenly flared crimson. The cheerful ceremonial music cut off with a painful screech. Every floating star above the hall froze in place. A mechanical voice older than the station itself echoed from the walls. Life Guardian pairing recognized, external threat detected, seal initiated. Massive doors slammed shut around the hall. Shields flashed over the windows, turning the view of space into a wall of blue fire. Guests shouted. Guards drew plasma rifles. The jellyfish ambassador fainted upward. Ethan instinctively stepped in front of Lyra. She looked at his back and said, "Did you just protect the medical professional?" "Habit. I am trained for emergencies." "So am I." "Then perhaps we should both panic professionally." Despite himself, Ethan laughed once. It was brief, rough, and entirely inappropriate, but it steadied him. Across the sealed hall, something heavy struck the outer doors. The impact rolled through the floor like distant thunder. Ethan looked at the metal platform, then at Lyra, then at the terrified galaxy watching them. "I really should have stayed home," he said. Lyra opened her diagnostic case and blue surgical light spilled across her face. "And miss your ceremony?" Another impact shook the chamber. Ethan drew the ceremonial blade from the guard nearest him. "Next time, I'm asking for the holographic buffet." The first thing Ethan learned about ancient galactic traditions was that they were terrible at timing. The second thing he learned was that sealed ceremonial halls had very poor emergency exits for people who did not have wings, tentacles, or diplomatic immunity. The outer doors shook again, throwing dust from the crystal arches. Nobles screamed in 17 languages. Somewhere above, the blue jellyfish ambassador floated unconscious against the ceiling shield like a decorative balloon. "Does this happen at every award ceremony?" Lyra asked, kneeling beside a fallen insectoid delegate whose breathing vents had locked from panic. "Only the fancy ones," Ethan said, gripping the ceremonial blade. "At human ceremonies, we usually just suffer through speeches." Lyra opened her diagnostic case. Thin rings of blue light unfolded from it, scanning the injured delegate. Her long ears angled forward with concentration, making her look calm in a way Ethan found deeply unfair. He had seen battlefield medics work under fire, but Lyra moved with almost musical precision. A mist of silver nanobots flowed from her palm and slipped into the delegate's vents. Seconds later, the clicking creature inhaled sharply and sat up. Ethan stared. "That would have been useful on Talvek." Lyra looked up. "You were on Talvek?" "I was the idiot carrying people through the burning district." Her silver eyes softened. "I was the idiot keeping them alive after you dropped them in my hospital." For one strange heartbeat, the sealed hall, the alarms, and the pounding doors faded. Ethan remembered white tents under red skies, screaming engines, and medical lights glowing through smoke. He had never known who treated the wounded after he dragged them from the fire. Now she was kneeling in front of him with long ears, silver eyes, and an expression that made his usual jokes feel suddenly small. Then Sergeant Milo slid behind a crystal statue and shouted, "Touching moment later! Something is trying to enter!" Through the very expensive door, the doors bent inward. Alliance guards formed a defensive line, but the ancient seal refused to let them activate heavy weapons. Every rifle sparked and shut down, declaring in a cheerful mechanical voice, "Lethal discharge prohibited during sacred pairing confirmation." Ethan glared at the ceiling. Wonderful. Even the building has opinions. The Chancellor stood at the central platform, arguing with a hologram of the ancient law system. "Override seal, emergency authority." "Denied," the station replied. "Life Guardian candidates must complete recognition." Lyra rose slowly. Recognition. Golden symbols spiraled around Ethan and Lyra again, ignoring the panic as if apocalypse were merely a scheduling inconvenience. A projection appeared between them. Two glowing handprints, one marked warrior, one marked healer. Ethan frowned. "Please tell me this isn't a marriage thing." The Chancellor hesitated. Ethan pointed the blade at him. "That pause was illegal." Lyra folded her arms. "I also object to the pause." Before anyone could answer, the outer doors exploded inward. Three black-armored intruders crashed into the hall, their bodies wrapped in distortion fields that bent the air around them. They carried curved pulse weapons and moved like shadows with engines. One fired at the central archive pillar. Ethan moved without thinking. He dragged Lyra behind a fallen banner as the blast passed over them and turned a marble statue into glowing dust. "That statue owed me money," Milo yelled from somewhere. The joke broke the panic just enough. Ethan grabbed a disabled guard rifle, ripped out its power cell, and hurled the cell across the floor. "Lyra, can your medical case make bright light?" "It heals wounds." "Can it make one?" That is a deeply human question. Thank you. Lyra slapped a control on her case. A surgical flare burst across the hall, white, blue, and blinding. The intruder staggered. Ethan charged through the light, slammed his shoulder into the first attacker, and knocked him into the golden platform. Milo tackled the second with the enthusiasm of a man who had always wanted to punch history in the face. The third intruder aimed at Lyra. Her expression changed. Not fear, calculation. She lifted both hands, and the medical nanobots around her hardened into a shimmering shield shaped like folded wings. The pulse blast struck it and scattered into harmless sparks. Her long ears trembled from the force, but she did not step back. Ethan, still wrestling the first attacker, blinked. You said you were a nurse. I am a very good nurse. That is not standard nursing. In my order, it is considered basic bedside care. Ethan laughed despite the danger and used the distraction to twist the attacker's weapon away. The intruder's helmet cracked against the floor. Beneath it was no face, only a smooth metal mask bearing a burned symbol, an eye split by a blade. The ancient station suddenly went silent. The Chancellor paled. The Null Covenant! At those words, every older diplomat in the hall looked as if the war had returned through the door, wearing a new uniform. Lyra stared at the symbol. They were erased from history. The station answered in its ancient voice. Incorrect. They erased the history. The golden handprints flared brighter, now pulsing urgently. Ethan looked at Lyra. I have a bad feeling this ceremony isn't finished. Lyra glanced at the broken doors, the frozen guests, and the defeated attackers. Captain Cross, I believe your metal has become complicated. Ethan sighed. That's the third thing I learned about galactic traditions. What? They come with paperwork, explosions, and a nurse who blocks plasma fire. The attackers were dragged away by security drones that looked far too pleased with themselves. One drone paused beside Ethan, scanned the ceremonial blade in his hand, and politely said, "Unauthorized sharp object." Ethan handed it over. It was emotionally authorized. The drone made a disappointed beep and floated away. The Grand Galactic Hall remained sealed, but the panic had lowered into nervous whispering. Diplomats hid behind cracked statues, nobles adjusted robes as if dignity could be repaired by smoothing sleeves, and Sergeant Milo sat on the edge of the platform with a bruise forming under one eye. I fought a terrorist at a medal ceremony, Milo said proudly. My mother will still ask why I'm not married. Lyra knelt beside him, silver light flowing from her case over his cheek, her long ears tilted in quiet amusement. Your injury is minor. My pride is critical. That condition is common among soldiers. Ethan watched her work. She looked almost human beneath the blue glow, but there was something older in the elegance of her face, in the way her long ears reacted to distant sounds before anyone else heard them. She moved gently, yet the shield she had formed against plasma fire still shimmered faintly around her wrist, like a sleeping weapon. The Chancellor approached with 2 archivists and a hovering cube full of ancient symbols. He looked as if he had aged 3 centuries in 10 minutes. Captain Cross, Nurse Veyr, he said, the Null Covenant did not come here to kill you. Ethan frowned. That's comforting in the same way as saying the bomb isn't angry. They came for the core testament. The hovering cube unfolded, projecting a map of the station. Beneath the grand hall, hidden far below the ceremonial decks, was a chamber Ethan had not seen on any public layout. Its shape resembled a heart built from machinery and crystal. Lyra's eyes widened. The first archive. Yes, the Chancellor said. The original Life Guardian records, names, bonds, debts, predictions. If they destroy it, every old alliance built on those oaths becomes legally vulnerable. Ethan rubbed his forehead. So my award ceremony accidentally reopened galactic history? Milo raised a hand. For the record, I voted for a normal dinner. Neshi wan en prei diresi. The ancient station's voice returned from the walls. Recognition incomplete. Guardian and healer must enter the core testament chamber. Ethan looked up. You again. I have always been here. That makes it worse. Lyra closed her diagnostic case and stood. Why us? The station projected 2 strands of golden light, one wrapped around Ethan's wrist, the other around Lyra's. They did not bind tightly, but they pulsed like quiet heartbeats. Warrior carried lives through death. Healer returned lives from the edge. Pattern confirmed. Ethan glanced at Lyra. It talks like a fortune cookie with security clearance. Lyra tried not to smile. Do humans insult all ancient machines? Only the dramatic ones. A hidden passage opened behind the platform, revealing a descending corridor filled with slow-moving starlight. Guards tried to follow, but invisible force fields pushed them back. Milo stepped forward and was immediately bounced into a chair. "I'm fine," he groaned. The chair attacked first. Ethan and Lyra entered alone. The corridor carried them downward without stairs, gravity shifting beneath their feet like a calm river. Through transparent walls, they saw the inner body of the station, energy veins, rotating memory rings, and thousands of sleeping drones curled like metal insects. Lyra walked beside Ethan, fingers resting on her medical case. "You protected me without knowing me," she said softly. "You were standing behind me. That's usually where danger goes when I'm unlucky." "That is not an answer." Ethan exhaled. "On Talvik, I learned that if someone is close enough to save, you save them first and ask questions later." Lyra's expression changed. "I worked in Hospital 9. Ethan stopped. Hospital 9 had been the last place standing in the burning city. He remembered carrying a little Aurelian boy through smoke, his skin cold, his breathing almost gone. He had handed the child to a nurse whose face he never saw because ash and blood filled the air. Lyra touched her long ear, suddenly uncertain. "You brought us many wounded. One child survived because you refused to leave him." Ethan swallowed. "Small boy? Blue blanket?" Her silver eyes brightened. "My brother." For a moment, neither spoke. The corridor hummed around them, carrying old memories with the patience of stars. Then Ethan cleared his throat. "Well, that explains why the universe gave me a nurse instead of a medal." Lyra blinked, then laughed quietly. "You are impossible. I prefer historically inconvenient." The corridor ended at a vast door made of black crystal. Golden symbols crawled across it, rearranging into their names. Ethan Cross, Lyra Veyr. Beneath them appeared another phrase. "The Covenant has returned." The door opened. Inside, the core testament waited, a glowing sphere larger than a house, filled with millions of floating names. But at its center, one name had been burned away, leaving only darkness spreading through the light. Lyra whispered, "Someone erased the first life guardian." The darkness pulsed. From within it, a voice spoke. "Finally," it said. "The new pair has arrived." The voice inside the darkness was calm, patient, and horribly familiar in the way nightmares became familiar after war. Ethan stepped in front of Lyra again, though this time she gave him a sideways look. "We discussed this," she whispered. "I'm consistent. You are blocking the nurse from seeing the patient. The patient is a haunted space archive. Then it definitely needs medical attention." Before Ethan could answer, the black wound at the center of the core testament widened. Millions of floating names trembled around it like frightened birds. A figure formed from missing light, tall and faceless, wearing armor that looked older than the Alliance itself. Its chest bore the same symbol as the attackers. An eye split by a blade. Lyra lifted her diagnostic case. "That is not biological." Ethan tightened his grip on the stolen pulse pistol. "Good. I was worried this would become personal." The figure spoke again. "The Life Guardian Accord was built on a lie. Warriors and healers were chained together to preserve empires that deserved extinction." Ethan glanced at Lyra. "I hate when villains start with philosophy. It means they've rehearsed." Lyra's ears twitched. "At least it is not a song." The figure turned toward her. "Aurelian healer, your order remembers nothing. You mend bodies while history bleeds." The sphere flashed and the chamber transformed. Ethan and Lyra stood in a memory projection above an ancient battlefield under green suns. Cities burned in orbit. Ships fell like stars. In the middle of the destruction, a warrior carried a wounded child, while a healer with long ears sealed a collapsing shelter with light from her own hands. Their names glowed above them, but one had been scratched away. Lyra reached toward the image. "The first pair." "The first betrayal," the dark figure said. "They discovered that the Accord's predictions could force civilizations into war to create heroes. When they tried to reveal it, the Senate erased them." Ethan's humor faded. "The current Senate? Every Senate wears the bones of the last." The memory shattered. The core testament screamed in static. Across the sphere, names began burning out one by one. Each vanished name sent a tremor through the station. Lyra moved quickly, silver nanobots streaming from her case into the damaged archive. It is infecting the records. Can you heal a database? I once healed a general who swallowed a translator chip and declared love to a vending machine. I will attempt anything. Ethan almost smiled, then saw three black-armored shapes climb from the darkness. More Null Covenant soldiers, grown from corrupted memory itself. Their pulse blades ignited without sound. Work fast, Ethan said. I always do. Try not to be stabbed dramatically. No promises. The first soldier lunged. Ethan ducked beneath the blade, slammed his shoulder into its chest, and fired the pistol at close range. The shot punched it backward into a pillar of names. Another attacker came from his left, but Lyra flicked two fingers without looking. A ribbon of medical light wrapped around its ankle and yanked it flat. Ethan stared. You can trip people with medicine? It is a rehabilitation tether. It rehabilitated him into the floor. You are welcome. They fought around the glowing sphere while Lyra's nanobots entered the black wound. The chamber reacted to their closeness. Golden light from Ethan's wrist and Lyra's wrist stretched between them, forming a thin bridge. Wherever the light touched, corrupted names stopped burning. The station's ancient voice returned, weaker now. Recognition deepening, shared memory required. Ethan groaned. Of course. Why would saving history be simple? A flood of images struck them both. Ethan saw Lyra in Hospital 9, hands trembling from exhaustion as she refused to leave patients during bombardment. Lyra saw Ethan outside, bleeding through his armor, carrying stranger after stranger through streets that melted under plasma rain. They felt each other's fear, stubbornness, grief, and the ridiculous thought Ethan had repeated during the battle. If I survive, I am stealing the general's coffee machine. Lyra looked at him through the golden light. You were thinking about coffee? It was a very good machine. The darkness recoiled, as if annoyed by their laughter. The faceless figure raised one hand, tearing open a hidden door behind the core testament. Beyond it appeared a star map marked with one pulsing destination, the dead moon of Arves. The truth is not here, the figure said. It was buried with the first healer. Then it collapsed into smoke. The remaining attackers dissolved. The core testament dimmed, wounded, but alive. Lyra swayed. Ethan caught her by the arm. I am fine, she said quickly. You look like someone tried to murder a library through your bloodstream. That is medically inaccurate but emotionally close. The hidden star map continued to glow. Ethan stared at the dead moon's coordinates, then sighed. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Regretting your ceremony? I expected a medal, Lyra. She closed her case, silver eyes shining with tired humor. Instead, you received a mission, and a nurse, a very good nurse. Outside the chamber, the station began unlocking its sealed doors. Far above them, alarms changed, from panic red to cautious gold. But deep within the star map, the dead moon pulsed like a buried heartbeat, waiting for them. The dead moon of Arves waited beyond the station glass like a gray skull caught in orbit. Ethan stood on the bridge of the research vessel Mercy 9, staring at it while the engines folded space into quiet blue waves behind them. Beside him, Lyra checked her medical case for the sixth time, her long ears twitching every time the ship's warning system coughed. That alarm sounds sick, Ethan said. It is not sick. It is old. So was my grandfather, and he made the same noise before breakfast. The pilot, a round amphibian officer with 4 anxious eyes, muttered, Please do not compare my ship to your grandfather. The vessel descended through Arvis's dust clouds, passing broken satellites and frozen battle debris from a war no history book admitted had happened. Beneath them, the moon's surface opened into a black crater, surrounded by ancient healer symbols. Lyra's silver eyes grew distant. My order said the first healer vanished, she whispered. They never said she was buried. Governments love forgetting things, Ethan said, especially embarrassing things, like taxes or my academy swimming exam. You failed swimming? I sank with confidence. Their boots touched the moon inside a shimmering air shield. Gravity felt weak, making every step too light. Milo bounced behind them in a security suit, holding a scanner upside down. I hate moons, he said. They always look guilty. The crater led to a sealed temple made of white stone and sleeping machines. When Lyra approached, the walls awakened. Golden light flowed toward her long ears, then around Ethan's wrist where the life guardian mark still pulsed. A door opened. Inside, the temple was not a tomb, but a memory garden. Holographic trees grew from crystal floors, their leaves containing frozen moments of ancient lives. At the center lay a sarcophagus of clear glass. Within it rested the first healer, preserved in light, her face almost human, her ears long like Lyra's, her hands folded around a broken star-shaped device. Lyra stepped closer, breath shaking. "She looks like us." The temple answered with a woman's recorded voice. "I am Lyra Veyr, healer of the first accord. If this memory wakes, then the lie survived us." Ethan glanced at Lyra. "Veyr?" Lyra's face went pale. "My bloodline." The memory garden darkened. Images rose around them. Maris and the first warrior discovering that the ancient prediction engine did not merely foresee war. It gently pushed civilizations toward conflict, arranging disasters so heroes and healers would be created. The Senate had used the Accord as a machine for controlled tragedy. Milo lowered his scanner. "That is the worst matchmaking service I have ever heard of." Ethan's jaw tightened. They made wars to produce saviors. Maris's recording continued. She and the first warrior had tried to shut the engine down, but the Senate branded them traitors. The Null Covenant had begun as their followers, then twisted over centuries into fanatics who wanted to erase not only the engine, but every civilization that had benefited from it. Lyra looked at the preserved healer. She tried to save everyone, and history buried her for it, Ethan said. The broken star-shaped device rose from the sarcophagus and unfolded in the air. It projected the location of the prediction engine, beneath the Galactic Hall itself, hidden inside the award station. Ethan stared. "Of course it's under the ceremony room. Why hide evil in a volcano when you can put it under catering?" The temple shook. Outside, black ships dropped from orbit like knives. The Null Covenant had followed them. Milo checked his rifle. Good news, the moon was guilty. Lyra reached for the star device, but the temple's defenses activated. Ancient drones unfolded from the walls, aiming at everyone except her. Ethan slowly raised his hands. "Friendly decorated hero," he said. "Recently denied medal." The drones did not care. Lyra stepped between them and Ethan. "He is my guardian." The word echoed through the temple. The drones lowered their weapons. Ethan looked at her. That sounded official. It was the fastest way to avoid your decoration becoming posthumous. "I appreciate efficient nursing." A blast struck the temple roof, raining silver dust. Lyra took the star device, and golden light surged from it into both their marks. For an instant, Ethan heard Maris's final whisper inside his mind. Courage without mercy becomes conquest. Mercy without courage becomes grief. Together, end the machine. Ethan turned toward the entrance as Covenant soldiers stormed through the crater. Lyra closed her medical case with a sharp click. "Captain Cross, can you hold them?" Ethan smiled tiredly. "I came for a medal, found a conspiracy, invaded a tomb, and learned my ceremony hall has an evil basement." Milo raised his rifle beside him. "That means yes." Lyra's nanobots spread around her like silver wings, illuminating her long ears and determined eyes. Ethan stepped forward, the dead moon trembling beneath his boots, and for the first time, the ancient bond between them no longer felt like a chain. It felt like a choice. The return to the Galactic Hall was not heroic. It involved one smoking research vessel, 3 broken stabilizers, Milo shouting at the navigation system, and Ethan holding a loose ceiling panel above his head because the ship insisted on shedding parts like an embarrassed metal bird. Lyra stood in the center of the bridge, her long ears lit by the golden pulse of Maris's star device, guiding the vessel through collapsing folds of space. "Is the ship supposed to scream?" Ethan asked. The amphibian pilot gripped the controls. "That is the emergency harmony system. It sounds like a whale falling downstairs." Milo nodded. "A patriotic whale." The station appeared ahead, bright and magnificent. But now, Ethan saw it differently. Beneath the ceremony lights, beneath the crystal halls and floating gardens, slept the prediction engine that had shaped wars for centuries. The Alliance fleet surrounded the station, confused by false orders spreading through their systems. On every channel, senators denied everything with the smooth panic of people whose secrets had grown teeth. Lyra opened a broadcast line. Her voice crossed the fleet, calm but trembling with truth. She showed them Maris's memory, the buried tomb, the stolen wars, the ancient machine that had turned suffering into policy. For several seconds, space itself seemed silent. Then, one old general answered, "By the stars, we were metals on a machine." Ethan leaned toward the transmitter. "Good news, we're shutting the machine down. Bad news, it is under the hull where I still haven't received my award." A few nervous laughs crackled through the fleet channel. It was enough. Ships began turning, no longer aiming at one another but at the Black Covenant cruisers emerging from hyperspace behind the station. The battle began like a storm made of mathematics. Laser grids flashed between warships. Drone swarms twisted into spirals. Shields bloomed blue and violet against the darkness. Ethan, Lyra, and Milo boarded the station through a damaged service lock, while the fleet fought above them. The Grand Hall was empty now, its golden platforms dark, its banners torn, its famous buffet finally revealed to be real, but tragically guarded by a collapsed chandelier. Ethan paused. "I knew it. Real food." Lyra grabbed his sleeve. "The evil engine first. History will remember my sacrifice." They descended through the hidden passage beneath the platform. The deeper they went, the more the station changed. Crystal became black metal. Ceremonial light became cold calculation. At last they reached a vast chamber where a machine the size of a city's heart rotated in silence. Rings of ancient code circled a central core filled with visions of possible wars. The prediction engine spoke before they did. "Guardian and healer, you are late." Ethan frowned. "Machines keep saying that to me. I'm developing insecurity." Lyra raised Maris's star device. "Your function ends now." "My function is preservation. Conflict creates unity. Tragedy creates heroes. Without me, civilizations scatter." Milo whispered. "That is exactly what a toaster says before burning the bread on purpose." The engine activated its defenses. Armored constructs unfolded from the floor, each shaped from old battle memories. Soldiers from wars Ethan recognized, healers from hospitals Lyra had served in, faces built to hurt them. Ethan's hands tightened. Lyra's silver eyes hardened. "They are not real." "No," Ethan said, stepping beside her. "But they remember us." The constructs attacked. Ethan met them with stolen pulse weapons and raw stubbornness, drawing them away from Lyra as she connected the star device to the core. Her nanobots spread across the engine like silver frost, searching for the command route Maris had hidden centuries ago. Each time the engine tried to corrupt her, the golden bond between her and Ethan flared, steadying her hands. "Captain," she called, "I need more time." "I'm giving you time," Ethan shouted, ducking under a blade. "Unfortunately, it's trying to stab me." Milo fired from behind a pillar. "I am also giving time. Mine comes with screaming." The chamber shook as the space battle struck the station's shields. The engine's voice grew deeper. "Healer, if you stop me, war will become uncontrolled. Pain will lose purpose." Lyra looked up, her long ears trembling, her face bright with silver light. "Pain never needed your permission to matter." She drove Maris's device into the core. The machine screamed. Visions exploded around them. Ancient battlefields, erased names, children saved, cities sacrificed, medals placed on uniforms that hid guilt. Ethan saw himself at the ceremony, expecting honor. Then he saw Lyra in Hospital 9, refusing to abandon the wounded. The bond between them blazed like a sunrise. Ethan lunged through falling sparks and placed his marked hand beside hers on the device. The engine whispered, almost afraid. "Together?" Ethan smiled grimly. "That was apparently the point." Lyra added, "And for the record, he still deserves a medal." The core cracked. Golden light erupted upward through the station, through the Grand Hall, through the fleet battle outside. The Covenant ships lost coordination. Alliance vessels pushed them back. Across the galaxy, old records awakened, names restored, lies exposed. The prediction engine stopped. Silence fell. Then, from above, the station's ancient voice said, "Ceremony may now resume." Ethan stared at the ceiling. Absolutely not. The silence after the engine died felt suspicious, like a machine pretending it had never tried to control history in the first place. Ethan stood in the shattered core chamber, watching golden light fade into calm pulses across the station. The Grand Galactic Hall above them was no longer screaming, just gently repairing itself, as if embarrassed by its earlier behavior. Milo tapped a broken console. "Good news, the apocalypse is over." "Bad news?" Ethan asked. "The buffet is definitely gone." Lyra gave him a tired look. Even exhausted, her long ears caught every shifting sound of the station, every settling crack of ancient metal becoming new again. The prediction engine's remains dissolved into harmless dust, drifting upward like quiet snow through gravity that no longer knew what to do. The ancient station voice returned, but softer now. Core influence removed. Life Guardian Accord restored to original intent. Ethan rubbed his face. Does that mean I can finally leave with a medal? Lyra tilted her head. Technically, the ceremony was never completed. Of course it wasn't. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, the entire station chimed in unison. Medal allocation pending. Ethan slowly looked up. I'm going to throw something at the universe. Lyra almost smiled. Please don't. I just repaired the universe's nervous system. Outside the chamber, Alliance fleets broadcast victory signals across the galaxy. The Null Covenant ships, cut off from their corrupted command network, surrendered without ceremony. Some simply shut down mid-flight, as if realizing they had been overcommitting to evil for far too long. In the weeks that followed, things did not return to normal. Instead, they returned to something worse. Paperwork. Ethan sat in a reconstructed diplomatic hall surrounded by holographic forms. You are requesting compensation for saving 27 civilizations, an administrator drone said. Yes, Ethan said. And you expect a medal? I was told there would be one, several times, possibly engraved. Lyra leaned beside him. He is emotionally attached to decorative metal. I am not emotionally attached, Ethan corrected. I am historically promised it. Milo raised a hand from across the table. I just want recognition for surviving all of this without becoming a villain. The drone beeped. Request logged. Lyra's medical order was reinstated across the Alliance. She declined promotion 3 times before accidentally accepting it while correcting a translation error. When asked why she stayed with Ethan, she simply said, "He keeps getting injured near important events." That's not a reason, Ethan protested. It is in my field. Later, on the rebuilt Grand Hall platform, a smaller, calmer ceremony was held. No floating stars, no exploding doors, just survivors, diplomats, and machines that had agreed to behave. The Chancellor approached them. The Life Guardian Accord has been redefined, he said. No longer a mechanism of prediction, a partnership of choice. He held out a small object, not a grand medal, not a galaxy-spanning decoration, a simple emblem of intertwined light and metal. Ethan stared at it. Is it safe? He asked. Yes. Explosive? No. Does it summon hidden wars? No. He accepted it immediately. Finally, something I can emotionally handle. Lyra studied it. It is smaller than expected, Ethan shrugged. So is peace, apparently. She looked at him for a long moment, then gently placed her hand beside his. The bond mark between them no longer burned. It simply existed, steady, quiet, present. You changed, she said. I survived, he replied. That is not the same thing. Fair. A soft silence passed between them, not uncomfortable anymore, just real. Milo leaned over. So what now? Retire? Write memoirs? Open a cafe? Please open a cafe. I need stable employment near snacks. Ethan thought for a moment, then looked at Lyra, at the repaired hall, at the galaxy, slowly deciding it might try not collapsing again. I think, he said slowly, I keep doing this, but with fewer explosions. The station voice quietly responded, unlikely. Lyra nodded. Statistically improbable. Ethan sighed. Fine, with slightly more controlled explosions. That, apparently, was acceptable. As the ceremony ended, ships departed, and worlds rebuilt themselves. Ethan finally understood something the medal could never have told him. He had not been chosen to be honored. He had been chosen to be paired. And for the first time since the war began, that did not feel like a mistake. It felt like a direction,